the 2025 Mini Cooper S. This is the all-new 4th generation Mini Cooper. It's still on the UKL platform. And this is going to be a tough car for a lot of Mini loyalists to reconcile with, because they are stepping away from that hot hatch, light, whimsical, sporty feeling car and moving more towards the luxury technology space. They've got rid of the manual gearbox. These cars are only had as a dual clutch. They focus more on interior technology. This is the F65 generation, and it comes as 3 different body styles: coupe, 4-door, or convertible, and 3 different trim levels: Cooper, Cooper S, which this car is, or John Cooper Works. The prices range from just under $30,000 to over $40,000. This car focuses on customization. Lots of different exterior color options, lots of interior options, lots of styling options. That's how Mini is trying to distinguish themselves in the small car space, by giving you the ability to truly customize these cars and make it your own. When it comes to usability, it's a Mini. It's not the biggest car in the world. So this 3-door does not have the largest hatch. Rear seats up, large enough for some small soft bags. If you have any hard cases, the rear seats are gonna have to fold down. The rear seats themselves are not very large. While you have excellent headroom in this car, actual legroom for the rear occupants is not great. If you have a taller driver, you're essentially SOL. Driver's seat. It is definitely short on the lumbar side, but lots and lots of adjustment. If you are taller or shorter, you should fit in this car, no problems. This car is essentially fully loaded, so it does get an optional massage function for the driver's seat. The other thing is touch points. It's a mixed bag. Your doors feel very nice. The actual steering wheel feels great. However, these optional paddles, yes, paddles do not come standard on all the Minis, feel very, very cheap. If you're gonna take away my manual gearbox, give me paddles, the paddles better feel good. That is not the case of this car. And the actual switchgear for things like your drive mode selector, your engine stop start, and your experience modes, which are your drive mode controls, also don't feel that good. Lots of storage in this car for the center console area and doors. They've done a good job, and the dash is nice and low. No blind spots in this car. Lots and lots of glass. Mini has done a good job on the interior side. Now, infotainment. Just like in years past, or Minis of past, you do not have a typical center gauge cluster. It's all displayed on your center screen, which is your infotainment, navigation, HVAC controls, and your speedo and tach. When it comes to the display quality in typical modern BMW products, it is excellent. The display is fast acting. The software is very, very good, like you're expecting from a Mini product. And one of the things that they've done well is, because you have to interact with it, it acts quickly. The con is HVAC controls. I'm currently in 20 Fahrenheit weather. It is very cold here in Illinois, and I'm gonna be wearing gloves when I get in the car. The HVAC controls, heated steering wheel, heated seats, no cooled seats, don't react well to gloves, so you have to take your gloves off to touch them. A con. Your experience modes, or your drive modes, can control the display themes. They play a nice bong or audio cue as you go through it. All of them are customized. It changes the way your speedometer and tach look. While they look nice visually, they're not the easiest thing to read. So if you don't have a traditional gauge cluster and you have to look over it quickly, you don't always get the information you need all that fast, which is a con of this car. The heads-up display, which is optional, is terrible. Now, the other thing to talk about is the audio system. This Harman Kardon audio system is not the best. Oh, it's not terrible. It's better than, say, the JBL in a Corolla, but it's, I don't think, as good as the Bose in a Civic or a Mazda. And there's an overall high level of wind noise, not so much road noise in this car. I think past that, though, it's time for us to head in the shop and put this thing up on the lift. In the shop with the 2025 Mini Cooper S. This is the F65 through F67 generation Mini Cooper hatch. They also make an electrified variant, which is technically on a different architecture. This is still built on UKL1, which is a Mini BMW joint front-wheel drive architecture. UKL2 is their slightly longer wheelbase variant of their front-wheel drive cars, which underpins things like the modern 2 Series, Grand Coupe, or whatever their front-wheel drive variant is called, and their BMW X2. This, of course, has been updated for the 2025 models, which means more body rigidity, more NVH material, the latest electronic architecture, which aids things like infotainment, and of course, it's safety suite, and there have been some minor suspension changes, along with some of the exterior dimensions slightly changing on things like the F66 variant. The base Cooper makes just over 100 or around 160 horsepower and 180-ish foot-pounds of torque. It's good for 0 to 60 in the high sevens, like 7.7. This Cooper S makes 201 horsepower and just under 230 foot-pounds of torque. It's good for 0 to 60 in the low sixes, like 6.3, 6.2 range. And of course, the John Cooper Works still exists. It makes 228 horsepower and 280 foot-pounds of torque. All three of these cars' trim levels use essentially the same engine. It is the B48. It is a 4-popper 2-liter. However, there are, of course, software changes, intake and exhaust changes across the various trim levels. And they all put their power down through a 7-speed dual clutch, which is interesting, as we're going to talk about when we drive it. Sadly, the manual transmission is dead. All of these cars run passive dampers. Of course, it's a strut front, multi-link rear. The suspension tuning apparently is identical between the Cooper and the Cooper S, and I think it's been changed for the John Cooper Works variant. This Cooper S has the John Cooper Works appearance package. I want to make that clear. This is not a John Cooper Works. And I'm also going to bring up the fact that while our mini rep tried, he doesn't actually know all that much technically about this car, and the media page offers essentially zero technical information. So my understanding is the Cooper lineup of hatchbacks all run open diffs. They all use torque vectoring by brake in the front to simulate a mechanical diff. Though thankfully, this has go-kart driving mode and weighs about 3,000 pounds. So with that, let's go take this for a quick drive. Setting off in the 2025 Mini Cooper S, we're in go-kart mode. ESC is off, we're in sports transmission. Let's launch this thing. The 4-popper in this thing, the B48, is best described, at least in this application, as a torque-forward experience, meaning torque dominates it. This is not an engine that really rewards you to wind it out. The fake engine noise in this car, particularly in sport mode or go-kart mode, is pretty nauseating, and really there's not a lot of power up high. It's all down low. The gearbox in this car, their dual clutch, is a mixed bag at best, if I'm going to be honest. It feels very, very similar to the way it's implemented in some of the other BMW products. It shifts pretty aggressively up high. It's a nice firm shift, but when you're around town, if you manually shift it, it never feels particularly smooth. You always feel it basically go into neutral, then engage the next gear. A lot of the really good modern dual clutches now, the upshifts are essentially seamless, and the downshifts in this vehicle aren't particularly amazing either, as we're about to demonstrate as I turn onto our farm road. My issue is if you take away the manual gearbox in this car and you leave me only an automatic, if you're still trying to make this an engaging driving experience, the automatic has to be something you never think about. Even in a torque converted application like the ZF 8-speed, you never think about that gearbox. But in this dual clutch's case, you do. So some turns, like that head shake forward is not exaggerated, is how the gearbox engages. Coming up, command to downshift, come on, command to downshift, command to downshift, there we go. It's hesitant to downshift and it's not that fast, and the upshifts are very abrupt. It literally feels like you're being head-butted by a turtle, which, again, pros and cons with that for sure. The other thing about this drivetrain is you do notice a little bit of torque steer at the steering. It's not terrible, but it is there. Something that's been largely removed from a lot of modern front-wheel drive fun cars. However, it does lead to a sense of engagement in the front. It's not a totally lifeless feeling front end. Man, this gearbox. Ride quality. This car feels very small wheelbase wise, and because it doesn't matter what mode you're in. The dampers are passive. It always rides the same, and it's definitely on the firmer side. You notice that I feel like this car doesn't have a lot of actual wheel travel, so the suspension bottoms out pretty easily, and it does not hide large bumps. You are going to feel it in your spine over very large bumps. It's funny because the rest of this driving experience, despite all of the glass in this car, does a very good job at hiding speed. You can be driving 40, 50 miles an hour, and it'll feel like you're driving much slower than that. Like 40, 50 in this car feels essentially parked, which is impressive feat in a car that is this size with all of this glass. If it's not windy out, the car does a good job hiding road noise, but it does not, as you can probably hear, do a good job hiding wind noise. The rest of the inputs, and that's where this car really shines, are very good, very BMW-like. Yes, the steering is largely lifeless, but it is incredibly direct. The pedals are well calibrated, throttle tip-in's pretty good. I mean, most of the inputs in this car are exactly what you're hoping for out of a BMW. And I think while I have mentioned a lot of negatives, one of the things that this car does very well is handle. It feels very, very nimble. It may not do the best at limit handling things, particularly in the modern world of Type Rs, GR Corollas, Elantra Ns, but there's a sense of like quickness to this car that if you're coming from modern CUVs and SUVs, you won't find anywhere else. This car feels very, very fun to whip in and out of corners. You can carry a lot of speed in corners. Surprisingly, it's still an engaging car drive. That's what Mini has always done very well. And if you are looking for that small, light car, outside of something like a Civic Si, in which the Civic is not small anymore, you don't have a lot of options, particularly in cars that feel well put together as well. There are still small cars out there, but they're all in that C segment, cheap and cheerful category. There is nothing like this Cooper. There's nothing like a, pretty good platform, great drive, well, good engine at least, combined with a nice feeling interior in a small package that exists anymore. That's why you buy a Mini. That's what's still great about this car. So with that, let's head into the final thoughts. Final thoughts on the 2025 Mini Cooper S. Like many of you, I have some fairly strong mixed feelings on this vehicle because I do think it is a mixed bag. So let's start with the pros first off. And what I will say is this is a very unique driving experience. There are very few small cars left on the market that you can buy new, and there are none with this level of BMW build quality and refinement with this sort of whimsical feeling package. I know that's an overused term, but there is something joyful about driving a very small car quickly. While it does not have the best at-limit handling characteristics, this thing is very fun to whip around. The B48 engine, the 2-liter in this Cooper S configuration, makes a ton of torque, and even in very, very cold weather, does return excellent fuel economy. Mid to high 20s all day long in like 17 to 10 Fahrenheit weather on snow tires. So what are the cons? Well, its biggest con to me, is at least as a Cooper S configuration, is its at-limit handling characteristics aren't as good as its modern competitors. This thing's nearly $40,000 as tested, which is a lot more money than, say, an Elantra N. I mean, you're edging into that super hatched category with Type Rs, Golf Rs, and some of the other fast options out there. It doesn't have an LSD, or at least it sure as hell doesn't feel like it. There's a little bit of torque steer in the front end, which, depending on who you are, is a pro and a con. And the worst part about it to me is a combo of the ride quality, which it does feel like a car that is very, very harsh. It doesn't deal with big bumps that well. Little bumps seem to upset it, again, even on snow tires, so that extra sidewall, and the gearbox tuning. While around town, it does a reasonable job. It's pretty smooth. When you're driving this thing hard, again, if you're going to take away my manual gearbox, you better leave me with a very, very good automatic or dual clutch, and at least in my experience with this, it is not good. You combine that with very abrupt stop-start, it leaves something to be desired. Is this a bad car? No. Is this a great car? No. This is a car that you're going to have to love what it's offering to want to part with your money with. So thanks for watching. Hope to see you again soon.